If you remember, in yesterday's video, we spoke about the Crunchyroll breach in where a lot of data was stolen from Crunchyroll regarding customer information. A lot of people didn't really care about that because a lot of people don't like Crunchyroll. I'm not here to try and tell you the positives of Crunchyroll here. I'm here to tell you how this could impact much more than Crunchyroll and much more than I actually initially believed, specifically around the gaming industry and how this could impact huge parts of the gaming industry that we know of, from gacha games to the more traditional Western market as well. So before we get in speaking about what Telus are and how this potentially impacts the games that we love, and actually speak about the companies who are involved with Telus and their subsidiaries, let's talk about actually what happened. So I'm going to bring up this tweet here from 604 Raw about the whole situation. Hackers stole nearly 1,000 terabytes of data from Telus Digital and are demanding $65 million. Vancouver-based Telus Digital confirms a cybersecurity incident with unauthorized access to some of its systems. The company is investigating with cyber forensic experts and law enforcement to see what is going on. No disruptions to customer services or connectivity have been reported. And the group that was the ones who did it, the Shiny Hunters, they claim they used stolen credentials from a Stales Loft drift breach. Don't know what the hell that is. Sales Loft, not Stales Loft. Misspoke there. And they are a revenue orchestration platform that designs software to help sales and revenue teams manage their workflows and automate communications. They help with business-to-business sales teams, increasing productivity, create more pipeline, and close more deals, basically. Apparently, they were breached, and they used that breach to gain information to then go on to breach Telus Digital, according to the group claiming to have actually orchestrated the whole situation. Anyway, so there you go. It's Sales Loft, not Stales Loft, and that's what they do. To access the systems over several months and took customer data, call records, source code, and even FBI background checks. Financial information and voice recordings from Telus and its client companies were also stolen. And the hackers have sent extortion emails demanding $65 million in February. Telus has apparently not responded to them, so a pretty big thing here. FBI background checks. So we've discussed what's happened. Let's actually talk about what Telus Digital are then, shall we? So what is Telus Digital? It's the digital and outsourcing division of Telus Corporation, a major Canadian telecom company which specializes its business in processing outsourcing, BPO, digital services and IT solutions for enterprises including gaming companies, tech firms, and global brands. And we're going to specifically look a little bit more at gaming companies today because that's what impacts us as gamers, right? We're going to talk about some of the games involved and some of the games that could potentially involved as well, but we've got no evidence of that. And the reason I want to talk about this specifically is not only because of the Crunchyroll hack, and then we found out that Telus was the origin of this, but more so because we've seen a myriad of breaches happening recently in the gaming space. And this only includes a couple, with obviously Warframe, DNA, and Reverse 1999 of recent victims. And there's probably many, many more. And it just got me thinking about what the hell is going on. Now, it's a common thing for these sort of things to happen, right? But it's been happening quite often and repeatedly with some titles. And obviously with Crunchyroll getting hacked or breached, should I say, through Telus, I thought it was worth looking into the company a little bit more and how that potentially can affect us. So, what does Telus do for gaming companies? Okay, so they deal with player support and customer experience, running player-facing support desks, ticketing, chat support, and troubleshooting, handling inbound player issues, and answering queries on behalf of game studios. A lot of game studios like to outsource this sort of stuff, right? Because it's a lot to deal with. A lot of them don't have the resources or the capability to do so. And also, a lot of them actually do sign NDAs, so it's not actually officially out there. Of course, a lot of gamers don't like to hear that those sort of things are being outsourced. They believe everything's typically handled in-house. Multilingual and scaled support. They operate in 25 plus countries with support offered in 50 languages, helping studios reach global audiences. They deal with content moderation and trust and safety. They help studios maintain community standards and content moderation for social channels and platforms. They also deal with scaling and process optimization, implements operational best practices for support scaling when games grow rapidly, which kind of makes sense when we speak about some of the games that we know for a fact are involved because they're huge, and some of the studios and corporations that are just behemoths in the gaming space. So it makes sense. So they're not a game developer, they're a third-party operations partner. And we saw with Crunchyroll how they were accessed through Telus. So there's a risk for gaming companies. Now, let me just once again reiterate that Telus have said there's no impact to their customers, i.e. the corporations and the companies that we're going to talk about. We're just talking about the worries here, right? Okay, so let's talk about confirmed companies, or a confirmed company, one of the biggest, and some of the games that we know Telus are working with as well. So, first off, we're talking Riot. Riot. Freaking huge, which Riot are owned by Tencent, and we talk about the overreaching, massive scope that potentially could have if Tencent are working with them in other regards that maybe we don't officially know about. We know officially through job postings that they are working with Telus Digital, explicitly stating that Telus Digital hire support specialists for Riot Games, showing that Telus Digital actively provides support and services for these titles. Now, let me tell you these titles. I'm sure you know what's coming, right? League of Legends, massive. Valorant, massive. Legends of Runeterra, Teamfight Tactics. These are all games we know for a fact have job postings explicitly linked to these games, so they are confirmed to be working with Telus Digital. Now, Telus are huge, right? They're a massive company that's owned by an even bigger parent company, and they do have some actual subsidiaries that they brought up, and one of those was Lionbridge, which they bought in 2021. Now, Lionbridge is a game service and localization provider, right? It's integrated into Telus Digital Now's ecosystem via acquisitions and stands as a part of its broader gaming operations. So let's talk about the games that are potentially, or we know, are involved here through Lionbridge themselves, right? So, developers and publishers Lionbridge works with: Machine Zone, Rise of Kingdoms; Square Enix, of course, things like Final Fantasy; Bandai Namco, we know Elden Ring, Tekken, think of all the Bandai Namco games; Marvelous, Story of Seasons; EA, I don't need to say anymore, it's fucking Electronic Arts; The Coalition, if you don't know that, that's Gears of War; Frontier Development as Planet Zoo, Elite Dangerous, those sort of games; NC Soft, Guild Wars; Ubisoft, need I say anymore; Good Shepherd, I don't know that company, but they make aircraft games apparently; Hoyoverse is listed, as I said again, Tencent, and I'm not saying Tencent, obviously Tencent's not connected to Hoyoverse in that regard, but Tencent are a massive company that reaches around the entire gacha space, the entire gaming space. So it's not a massive reach to think potentially this could be linked to other games as well that we play. And actually, we might actually know that they are connected to at least one gacha game that I'm sure you've all heard of. We've also got Warner Brothers Games, IO Interactive, which make Hitman; Platinum Games, Wooga, Jagex, they make RuneScape. And now we're talking about a little bit of gacha here. We've got Nexon, and we know that Nexon are involved in a multitude of games. MapleStory, we've got The Finals, we've got Vindictus, we've got Blue Archive, we've got other games. So we know that they're working with titles that directly are connected to the gacha space, and indirectly through companies like Tencent, and of course directly through Hoyoverse. We've got Xbox Game Studios, we've got Kakao Games, we've got Sega, we've got Yuzu Games, we've got Kong Studios, we've got Playtika, we've got Zynga, and apparently we've got Sony as well, and Sega also. This is insanely huge. So all of these logos appear under Lionbridge service offerings, indicating past work or partnerships. Now, this doesn't confirm that they're working with all of these titles as is, but it confirms that they have worked with them or are potentially working with them. So it's primarily focused on localization, QA testing, audio and voice localization, and player experience services, not necessarily player support like Telus Digital. So we might not be getting the same sort of information shared here. This is an ecosystem. These are connected companies. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean if Lionbridge gets breached, that Telus get breached and vice versa, but it just shows how deeply entrenched in the gaming space this company is, and how these breaches to these sorts of company that we don't even know exist could affect the gaming space massively. This is why I said yesterday, in the video that it doesn't even really matter so much. It does to the people who are customers of Crunchyroll, but it doesn't really matter if you don't care about that. If you're a gamer, this potentially affects so many other things, and it goes beyond gaming as well. As I said before, fintech companies, banks, much more, customer support in a multitude of different spaces as well. So it creates an increased attack surface, right? So with Telus, the potential of leaked internal workflow and tools is increased, which might point towards, games and what's happening with games actually getting leaked as well. Exposing credentials, databases used for support, obviously tickets, information on the customers, potential transactions that they've made, their account names, and potentially even more. Obviously, we saw with the Crunchyroll information, it looks like people's IP addresses were potentially snatched, account names, and maybe even payment information. We saw as well with Telus FBI background checks. So who knows the potential supply chain risk here? It's actually huge. As I say, this impacts potentially so many games. Not this breach directly, although it could be, because a petabyte of data was stolen, and we know that around 100 gigs of data from Crunchyroll was stolen. What's the rest of the data regarding? Now, it could specifically be around staff information for Telus themselves, and maybe some other company information as well. Or it could actually affect their clients. Again, Telus have said their clients' services haven't been affected. I didn't say that the client's information hasn't been specifically affected. So who knows what this actually could impact? But it could impact freaking anything and everything when you think about it. When we look at the list of game titles, publishers, and massive corporations in this space, these guys deal with the biggest of the biggest players in this space. The biggest, in fact. We've got Tencent, we've got Microsoft, we've got Hoyoverse, we've got Square. These are huge companies and that have huge player bases. So you might not care about Crunchyroll, but you might care about the other companies that potentially could be affected by this breach or other breaches through a company such as Telus. These are the sort of companies that we never really hear about because they don't serve us directly. They do, but they're doing it in an indirect manner through these other companies. They serve the services that serve us. So it's it makes sense that we don't know who Telus Digital is, at least outside of Canada, because they are a massive IP server and telecoms company in Canada. So the Canadian audience would probably know who Telus is, but the international audience might be totally oblivious to who the hell they are. The games industry isn't, and they're working with lots of it. Again, as I say, I don't want to scare anybody here. A lot of this is probably specifically when it comes to the gaming space, more around localization, QA testing and such. So customer information is probably less likely to be involved, at least for the majority of the games. Now, when it comes to the Riot games, a little bit more potential there, or definite potential for information of customers to actually be exposed to Telus. And obviously, if Telus are breached, that to be then exposed to the people who are accessing the services that Telus provide. So I thought I'd just give you guys a little bit more information on this because I found this incredibly interesting. I'd never heard of this company up until a couple of days ago. And now they're actually connected to many games that I play. So I've learned something new. Hopefully you guys have found it interesting. Let me know what you think down below. If you've enjoyed the video, guys, give it a like. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you all in the next one. Ta-ra.